It's 25 minutes after 8 and it's time for us to get to some lifestyle talk. And today we're talking relationships, and not just relationships, but keeping intimacy alive in marriage or a relationship where you're committed and you've decided this is what you're doing for life. Because let's admit it, there's that initial time when everything is very sparky and there's fire all over and things are rosy and things are good. But there are times that one may face challenges, and especially in terms of intimacy. By the way, intimacy here is not just talking about bedroom affairs, but even just relating to one another in an intimate manner where you find that person is your soulmate. There are times in a relationship that particular area is dealt a blow, and that's what we'd like to talk about. As usual and as always, remember you're welcome to participate in this conversation. Personal stories are normally very strong stories, so feel free to share your story and say maybe you're going through a dry patch, maybe you have gone through a dry patch and you managed to get solutions, and you can share those solutions. It's not one size fits all, but by all means your experience would definitely come on board to help us have this conversation and drive it forward. And joining me in this studio is our usual, shall I call them usual suspects? And starting on my extreme left is Ken Oko, who's a sociologist. Welcome into the studio.
Good morning, Michael.
And we also have Chris Hart, who's a relationship expert. Great to have you guys.
Good morning.
And as usual, or rather, it would have been nice to also have a lady. So ladies, if you're out there, would really love to hear from you, because we don't want this to be just a male conversation and, us guys saying this is what us men like and this is what we prefer. And when intimacy is out of the door, it's because of A, B, C, D. But we'd like you to participate as well. So I'll start with you, Ken, and let's start, I think, from the basics of why people come together. Because I think over time, sometimes we lose that notion. I remember attending a wedding not too long ago, and I thought what the priest did was really nice, because he told each of those who are getting married to write 5 things as to why they're saying yes on that day. And then he exchanged, and I thought that was brilliant, because one of the things I think that we lose is the original reason. But first, let's start with the basics. What brings a couple together?
Actually, there's usually different reasoning on the male and the female part. For men, if we are to level on the topic we are on today, it is first the search for intimacy, and that intimacy needs to be exclusive.
This is for men?
Yes, and that's very special for a man. That he needs to have exclusive access to intimacy with the woman, and to ensure that he hems it in. So the male psyche is such that this is mine. Yeah, but for the woman, she's actually looking for stability. And security. Yeah, security and all those things that come with it. Intimacy is a bonus for her. Yeah, so that's where, again, many of us start going offside. Once the minute we tie the knot, you're thinking, okay, so what were you looking for? And then the guy looks like, oh, I finally got what I wanted. I was looking for a beautiful woman who I could keep and, have access to. But there's always all these difficulties when you ask people what they want, because they'll tell you what they want you to hear. It's the same way I tell my daughter every day. If a man walks up to you and says, "Hi, darling, how are you doing?" Stop that guy and ask him, what exactly do you want? Most men, they already know what they want, but they'll never tell you, because it's too obvious. If you were to say, "Oh, no, I just looked at your bums and I really like them," he can never say that. So most men would try to be very polite about it, disguise it.
But I think you're intelligent.
Yes, but the woman will look at you, and the first impression, believe you me, Chris will tell you, she has already known who you are. Yeah, from day one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, do you agree that the basic fundamental thing that a man is looking for is that exclusivity and intimacy, whereas a woman is more or less looking at security?
I hate to say it, but I think it's even more basic. I think they are getting together because they want children. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no other purpose for having a long-term male-female relationship. I mean, why have a permanent relationship? The only real answer is because you want children. Otherwise, why not just enjoy everybody's... Yes, exactly. So I think at the end of the day, it's all about... But you
could still have children even if you, had
I mean,
relationships elsewhere.
Yes, of course, but the fact is that within long-term stable relationships where both are contributing to the upbringing of the children do better. So, sort of evolutionary terms, that will be favoured. A cooperative relationship where the two stick together. So that's basically why they're all doing it. And what he says is right. So the guy looks at the girl, he's saying, is she the right shape to have a lot of nice children. You know, she's the right age. She's showing me the right shape that says she's fertile.
But do we really think that far? When you look at a lady and you think, oh, blimey, she looks nice.
No,
do you ever think that, I wonder how my children would look combined with me? Do we really ever think that far?
No, of course not. You look at the girl and you say, she is beautiful. But what is your criteria for beautiful? And it's going to be youth, health, curves in all the right places which say that her estrogen levels are high, da-di-da-di-da. You see, what does she look for when she's looking for a guy? Well, she wants health, she wants fitness, she wants high social status, she wants a bulging wallet.
Deep pockets.
Deep pockets. I mean, let's be blunt about all these things. All the drivers for why do two people choose one another are children.
Okay, do you agree with Chris at home? I have a feeling not very many people may agree with you. And for you who may be in a long-term relationship or even married, when you looked at that girl, when you looked at that guy, did you actually see equals children? Maybe that's a conversation that we're going to have. Okay, there is that initial, according to Chris, you look at the lady and you like the curves and all that. But then what is it that develops that relationship? Because I'm sure many of us have all seen very beautiful women and very beautiful good-looking men all over. But there's that one that you zero in and say, okay, this is somebody I think I would like to settle with. What are those things that one looks at and develops a relationship?
You know, in terms of choice, women are wiser than us. Yeah, men are very visual and very physical. So you look at a woman and you like what you see and you start struggling very hard, you know, to have access and to make sure that you hem her in. But for the woman, believe you me, she looks way ahead. Yeah, and like Chris says, sometimes they judge you on the basis of what's going to happen thereafter. If I have a child with this guy, how will that child look? You know, but when you think about our initial reaction to meeting up, most people get married on the basis of propinquity, that the person was near you and you bumped into them and you liked what you saw. Then you start off from there without seriously thinking that I'm going to marry you next week or next month. First, it just starts off like that. And eventually when this woman, you know, gets into your system and you become quote unquote obsessed with her, like you really like her, believe you me, you start plotting your future. Like Chris says, every time that you want to go into a deep relationship, you think of course of the products. Yeah, because people will ask you, if you relate for 10 years, guys start asking you, what are you doing? You know, because they don't see any rascals running around. Yeah, but they need to know, if you get married anyway, they give you what, 1.5 years, 2 years? Already your mother is calling you, how's your wife? She's fine. Is she okay? You're sure? Yeah, because they need to know that she's not too well.
Any progress.
Yeah. You know? So basically, the whole society is constructed like that they need to look out for a partner, and that partner ought to be someone who is able to bring forth offspring.
Are you changing your mind now?
No, I'm still,
the weight of argument from this end of
I'm still not convinced to that level. Maybe by the time we get to the end. But Chris, let's now talk about the actual intimacy. And when we talk about intimacy, what is intimacy?
Well, it's on a whole load of different levels, of course. I mean, let's be blunt. Really, it's about being naked between the sheets, making children. Let's be blunt about this. That's what it's intimacy. All about. But along the way, there are all sorts of different levels of intimacy. I mean, people need to get close to one another in terms of being truthful, trusting. You don't start having children with somebody you don't trust. You don't trust somebody who is not honest with you. You don't trust somebody who is flaky. So intimacy starts with the development of a relationship which is about honesty and trust, about the exchange of information, about me knowing enough about the partner I'm dating that I think I can get along with this person and I enjoy it. In a modern world, we tend to say that a relationship is about love and joy, and I mean, our great-great-grandfather wouldn't have been totally interested in any of that. He'd have just said, where are your fields, you know, can you manage a hoe? But now we want, intimacy means pleasure. It means enjoying each other's company. It means sharing interests, sharing values. So all of that has to come together. And at its crudest, sharing time together. Now that's one of the biggest challenges at the moment. You know, you get an awful lot of people who are so
They're both very busy.
driven by their careers, their interests, their social lives, that they don't actually spend very much time with their spouses, and then they wonder where intimacy has gone.
Okay, so the beginning of intimacy, Ken, we could say, is literally developed by spending time together.
Yeah, you know, when I teach sociology of the family, I identify 4 or 5 different types. But like he says, the most important is not even the physical. It is psychic intimacy, that in your mind you're both together. Well, however far apart you are, you could be at work, and then you suddenly just feel like something is not right with my spouse, and you check up on them, and that makes a woman go gaga. The fact that a man can do that, because we don't do that. Whenever you see a phone call from your wife, you're thinking electricity or water. You know, something is wrong in the house. You ask her, hey, what's up? You know, then she says, I was just saying hello, and that takes men aback, because you're thinking, oh, you're just saying hello, I'm busy. Yeah, I'll see you in the evening. Yeah, but if you can do that, then you develop psychic intimacy. But the most important is social intimacy, interactive, where not just you and her, but you with other people. The minute you see families out in Village Market or Sarit Center, they're not going sightseeing. They're actually showing the world that we are together, you know, and that is social intimacy. They take pictures, they paste them on Facebook and wherever. All that is the practice of social intimacy. Visitation. Somebody leaves Kawangware to go visit another one in Dandora. That bus fare is enough to buy you chicken and eat it at home. But you do it because you're trying to promote familial, you know, intimacy. Then now you finally come to the physical, which is the biological, which, like Chris says, is divinely primed for the purpose of children.
Procreation and you know,
go ye forth and fill the earth.
And fill the earth. Right, so Chris, now how do we ensure that this doesn't fade out over time? Because you'll admit and will agree that at the initial point of a relationship, it's like, man, you can't wait for this intimacy thing. If it's time, you can't wait to see the person that you know you love. If it's maybe even sometimes just talking on phone for hours on end, then the same relationship over time, you have nothing to talk about. What happens?
Yeah. Well, I think it's priorities, really. People just get conflicting priorities. Both men and women these days are told that the only way to get fulfillment in life is to have a tremendous career and earn lots of money and have lots of possessions. So they go out and they do it. And then they come home tired. And then they start messing around with their phones and what have you, and before they know it, you know, it's midnight and they've hardly spoken to one another. It's just conflicting priorities.
Okay.
And the only way really to keep a relationship alive, keep the intimacy alive in a relationship, is to devote time to one another. And you know, one of the saddest things you ever see is the guy who never spends any time with his wife and then suddenly finds time for an affair. Now that tells you he had enough time all along. But he wasn't spending it with his wife, you see. Now, spend the time with your wife, spend the time with your husband, and intimacy will remain.
Okay. Yeah, you know, the biggest paradox in marriage is actually children, you know, the ones Chris likes talking about. That you bring these children forth, and they're supposed to act like the sellotape, the glue, yeah, and they are supposed to keep you together. But then once they arrive, the mother also kind of abandons you, you know, so she has time for the child.
There's a new love for the...
You know, and she's always preoccupied with the baby and criticizing you about the baby, you know, telling you don't take enough interest, you don't take care of the child. And women are so good at that. They'll make you feel really useless when it comes to parenting, and you think you're doing your best. So then the baby starts sharing your bed at some point, you know, in between or on the side, and yeah, that's it for you. So then the child is paradoxical in that sense, that it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they really are supposed to keep you together, but on the other hand, that child
what
creates...
he says, you know, is really true. It's one of the biggest mistakes women make, is the day the child is born, they focus on it. Now, we all accept that, you know, they take a lot of looking after, and you have to devote time to them. But if you put the child number 1 and your husband number 2, intimacy is straight out of the window, and you're in deep trouble, because before long the guy is spending more and more time with his mates in the wrong sort of bars, and everything starts to go wrong. And the other thing he said is also very interesting. The way women criticize their husbands about childcare. The poor man holds the baby, and instead of saying, "Ah, how sweet," you know, and encouraging him to bond with the child, she says, "You don't hold him like that." Instantly throws it away. How do you expect a father to take part in the household chores, the child rearing, if every time he touches something he gets criticized? But all women do it.
All right, I'll invite calls here, and if you're at home and you'd like to participate, feel free to give us a call. The numbers are displayed on your screen. You can also tweet your experiences and maybe comments or questions that you may have to our panel here, Ken Ouko, who is a sociologist, and Chris Hart, who's a relationship expert. We'd love to hear from you, from your experiences to what you're going through, and maybe you've managed to keep your relationship alive and intimacy alive throughout. We'd love to hear from you. Now, I'm sure, Chris, I was reading a book not too long ago, and it was talking about the two fundamental, and I'll come back to this, but the two fundamental things between men and women, whereas men demand respect or require respect, and women want to be loved.
Yes.
And once you have that core exchange of respect and love, then you're bound to have that. But that twiddles down over time. But I'll come back to that. I want to take a call from George. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Tom.
Yes, George.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, I have a question. There's this thing which is it's running in people's mind, but you find someone, okay, some people can get together in a marriage after maybe a pastor fumble a few words in the church and they will tell us somewhere else. And others, you find that a lonely person, a lonely man, a lonely woman meet somewhere in the town and they start shaking and they get in together. What is it that in the human mind that make the men pastor say some few words, then they feel that, oh, now this relationship can move on clearly? That's the question I just want to ask sociologists. Thank you.
All right, thank you, George. We also have Caro in Nairobi. Good morning, Caro.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
My question is there a correlation between intimacy prior to and the longevity of that marriage?
Sorry, intimacy prior?
If you have intimacy, because if you have intimacy prior to marriage and the longevity of that marriage, because God did create intimacy for marriage, and we're experiencing a lot of divorces, me being one of them, an example, because couples are enjoying intimacy prior to marriage. Yeah, so is there a correlation between the longevity of that marriage?
All right. Thank you very much. Two questions there. Let's start with George, who was asking why there would be a difference between somebody who goes to church. I think he was talking about a church wedding where somebody mumbles words, and that is meant to keep you together, whereas there are others who meet and the relationship develops and it continues. What would the difference be? Is there something in the psyche that makes us believe the fact that we have maybe an overarching authority, be it a church, be it our parents, once they've mumbled those words and blessed us into the relationship, we must stay in it?
You know, Michael, there are different types of marriages, and we typify them on the basis of formation, how they are formed. And the most widely acceptable one is the covenant marriage, where the woman will insist, mostly the woman, will insist she wants to be walked across the aisle, she wants to be pronounced, in front of everyone. Most men, if you asked me, would just rather hide the woman in a cave and, do their thing. But the woman will then see to it that you go through the covenant sanctioning of that marriage. And when you do that, apart from the sense of stability, there's also that sense of legitimacy, that I have been given this one. And that's why the wedding night traditionally used to be a very famous night, because even your own mother is looking at you and they know tonight, officially, something is going to happen. And the next day everybody is like, how was it? So officially it's on and everybody now is aware. But if you just meet on the street, like he says, and you hit it off, well, fine, you might end up with a very quality relationship, but it will lack legitimacy. And the idea that you're just transiting, you keep being asked, when are you going to make this formal? Even though you're really happy as a couple. But there's that sense of legitimacy that we all require. And that's why sometimes people just walk to the aegis chambers, for the sake of that legitimacy, and you say, do it for us.
Okay, Chris, do you agree that there's something within us that gives us more authority, or rather gives us more longevity in a relationship when we have made it public, when everybody is aware that this is the person I'm committed to?
Right. That is the actual word. It's the commitment. The relationships that are most stable, most long-lived, are the ones with the highest degree of commitment. And what you tend to find is, it's almost the other way around. The people who have a high degree of commitment are prepared to make public statements about their relationship. And the people who have low commitment tend to avoid them. So you tend to find a lot of people cohabiting, not because they don't love one another, but because they lack commitment. Lacking commitment, relationship unstable, collapses at the first hurdle.
Okay.
So the two are very firmly linked, but it's all about commitment.
Okay. There's, I think she's called Caro, and she is asking the question, the correlation between intimacy before marriage and what is commonly known as delayed gratification. It would be a bit like, if I would use a different example, it would be like having a credit card, and you swipe your card and get everything today instead of delaying and ensuring that you have everything in place before you can now spend the money. Is there a correlation, Ken?
One time I was giving a talk somewhere, and some guy just woke up and asked me, what if I stay a virgin, she stays a virgin, and then finally when we get married, I realize I married a frigid woman. What do I do? And it could be vice versa. You date this guy and nothing ever happens, and then finally when you get married, wedding night, you realize he's...
And I hate to say this, but I have quite a number of patients
cases
doing
like
exactly that.
Yeah.
There is a group of people in society called asexuals. They are just
asexual.
Asexuals. They are
people who are
simply
against
not,
sex.
They're not interested in sex. Not so much against. Their brains are wired differently, so they feel no desire. They often feel pressure, social pressure, to be in marriages. Now you see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you don't find that out until the wedding night, you've got a problem. Now, I'm afraid that's quite common. It's quite common to simply find that the level of desire is different. The interests, the way you go about desire is different. Now, if you only find that out when it's too late, lots of problems. So I find myself in a dilemma, because part of me wants to say, I think you really ought to explore all this before you make a final decision. Whereas the other half of society is saying, don't you dare.
You wait.
You see, now we've got a real problem in society with that.
Wow.
And in fact, a great number of societies actually go out of their way to find out whether couples are sexually compatible before they tie the knot.
I will take a call from Paul in Migori. Good morning, Paul. Paul in Migori. Hello.
He went off there.
Maybe Paul in Migori, maybe the call has dropped. We also have James in Nairobi. Good morning. James in the city in the sun, Nairobi. Okay, I think we may have dropped both calls. And okay, Ken, still alluding to the fact that of delayed gratification. There are those. If we look at the traditional way of marriage, where you'd actually have your parents even choose your bride for you, those marriages, as it were, lasted. So what changed? And then in those days, there was really no testing 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd actually not even know who your bride is until the wedding day.
Yeah. Well, it works. The Somali community, they do those things. The coastals do those things. The Arabs, they tend to do that. But if you take the case of the Akamba, for example, the woman would have to prove her worth, before she is entitled to getting into that nuptial arrangement. But if you think about it, I think it's the levels of the different types of socialization that we go through. Because these days, believe you me, virgins are like, what, 1 in a million? They're hard to find, very hard to find. But it's a fashion. It's a fashion statement. Every woman you meet tells you she's a virgin.
Or secondary virgin.
Secondary virginity. I'm trying to do this, and yeah. So basically, as we tread out there, you're literally trying to say, I need to balance between morality and self-interest. Like Chris says, if your mother will tell you, especially for the girls, you wait for your husband. Yeah, and finally, the girl will ask the mother, if you're clever enough, how will I know this is husband material? Yeah, and then finally you say, okay, fine, let me just keep trying until the right guy comes along. Or alternatively, you stay away from relationships until one day when you feel like, I need to find someone. So either way, you're in danger. If you remain virgin, both in the mind and physically, and then you're thinking something is going to happen by miracle. Yeah, and that's why most guys, especially the boys, they test themselves out. You need to find out if you're okay.
One of the things that really amuses me is that there's a double standard in this. Almost every girl you talk to says that she wants to be a virgin for all sorts of reasons on her wedding night, but she wants her husband to be able to show her what to do. And where does she think he got that
The experience. He read a book, or he watched Morning Express.
You know?
Let's watch Morning Express.
He watched Morning Express, and he got the solution. Let's talk solutions for that person, Ken, who is in a relationship.
Yeah.
They really don't want to bail out, but they can feel that the intimacy is no longer there. Where do they start, and how do they resolve this?
When I did that famous work of mine, 1,792 couples, one of the main things, yes, there are quite a number, one of the main things we found out is women are very reluctant to cheat on their spouses, very reluctant. But when they do, one of the things they cite is romantic malnutrition. They say, oh, you know, this guy used to be all that, and then now he's none of that. Yeah, so then they look out for that spark in the office or wherever, and it just happens. So I tell husbands, and you know, anybody who cares to listen, that all the woman needs really is to spark that life in her. And you don't have to wait for the evening, you don't have to wait for the bedroom. You know, during the day, like they do, check up on her. Say, hi babe, I'm thinking of you. You know, and for a woman, you've earned yourself bonga points for a week when you do that. Yeah, and basically you need to excite the person in your life. Spouses don't excite each other. That's a problem we have. I don't know about, we don't excite each other. You just sit there and say, oh, now we're married, we're happy.
Pass the salt.
Yeah, pass the salt.
But you know, I tell you something about what he's just said. Everybody believes that lots of men have affairs and extramarital relationships and all the rest of it, and women never do. Think about that for a moment.
How do they do it?
It doesn't sound very plausible. In fact, what is almost invariably found is that men will tell you the truth about their affairs. If you go up to them in the street with a clipboard and say, have you ever had an affair? The guy will say yes. Ask a woman, ooh, no. Because I mean, there's a real double standard on this. Women are not supposed to do this. But do you know the number of women who have affairs? It's exactly the same as the number of men.
Absolutely.
To within 3 decimal points. The only difference is that women tend to have them later in their lives. Women in their 30s have far more affairs than women in their 20s.
True.
So, of course, if you ask the 20-somethings, the men will outnumber the women. But ask the 30-somethings, the women will outnumber the men.
Okay, let me take a call from Oguma in Migori. Good morning, Oguma. Good morning. Oguma in Migori.
Needs to get onto a guava tree.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, we've lost another call right there. Now, Ken, earlier on I'd mentioned that I think, like you've mentioned, you don't have to wait for the evening for you to begin that conversation. And I think we all sort of know what to do, because if you look at how we relate, you'll find that if you have a mpango akanda, for example, or you have you'll be doing those things. It's only that you're not doing that to your wife. Hold that thought. We have somebody. We have a call. Elijah.
Hello.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I'm calling you from Vihiga. I just want to make a contribution.
Yes, go right ahead.
I would like to help our ladies understand a few things. That men in the house are like children. They need attention.
Okay.
From dressing, from the socks, from everything. But the moment a child comes into the marriage, the attention to the man is gone. And that's why you find a lot of men are out there in the pubs in the evening. They come to the house at 10 o'clock in the night, they just want to sleep. Simply because the attention that the woman was giving when they did have a child is gone.
Okay.
And woman puts a lot of attention on the child and the house guy. So in life out there on the streets, you'll hear women talking about the children and the house guys. It means the man feels that the house is no longer his place. So they want to spend a lot of time out there with friends in the pub, because when they go to the house, there is a lot of hostility. The woman is hostile.
All right.
So let our women understand that men in the house are children. The attention that you give the man when you're dating, when you don't have a child, is the attention that you need to give the man when when you are 20 years old in the marriage.
Okay, thank you.
At the moment you go to attend to the children most and the house girl, the man feels that he's no longer needed in the house.
Okay, point made.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elijah. And the point there is that men are children. Okay, we'll take another call from Anthony in Kisumu. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
The question that I have, for a relationship to work for some time, is it a must for a man to have some good cash for the relationship to run?
Sorry, is it a?
Is it important or is it mandatory for a man to have some good cash for the relationship to work for some good time?
Okay, I think I'm missing a point of that. Just repeat, is it important for?
Is it mandatory for a man as a man? Is it a must that you have some good cash for the relationship to work?
I'm not quite
missing.
I can't quite hear. Okay, so I'm sorry, I can't hear exactly what he's saying. He's asking if it's mandatory for something to happen, but do you agree in terms of men being children in the house, Ken? Basically, all they want is attention.
Nah, I wouldn't put it
children
like that. Yeah, you know, William Shakespeare said, aging is childhood revisited. But that's not what a man is in the house. The man is just that guy who requires to be taken care of as he used to be. Yeah. The other thing is that you might find men who are actually over and about the house. They go to the kitchen, they do their thing, they come sometimes clean up the table, and believe you me, your woman, if she's appreciative, would give you marks for that, because those kind of men are not very common. Yeah, so instead you find this guy, the sedentary husband, who just comes home with his newspaper and says, give me food, give me water, give me toothpicks, everything is just give me. Maybe that's the guy he's talking about.
Okay.
But the modern man, you get home a bit later, you go to the microwave, you do your own food, you come sit with it, do your thing, and the woman is there watching you, you know, and you're not going to complain about it like the caveman. Yeah.
But I tell you an interesting thing. The guy who does 50-50 in the house, their sex life goes totally flat.
When you say 50-50, what do you mean?
I mean, if they literally split all the childcare, all the laundry, the dishwashing, everything, if they do everything together, it just drops. It's really strange.
And the reason for that
Yeah,
would
well,
be...
yes, basically, because the old traditional image of the man, you know, when he comes in from the farm dripping with sweat and rippling muscles,
Chris,
I'm afraid it is
okay.
quite...
All right. Okay. Very, very briefly, maybe Ken, just those small little deliberate efforts that one used to make. For instance, maybe the woman would wear lingerie and, you know, be presentable and prepared. Now, when you get married or when it's a long-term relationship, she goes to bed with a t-shirt printed Raila Tosha or whatever, you know, so or whatever.
Oh Lord.
Deliberate efforts. Maybe just mention on how important that is.
No. You know, when women do that, I think men, we are literally almost the same. If you're always sleeping in your shorts or whatever it is. But the woman, you're right, you know, starts off with that sexy lingerie. And then later on, she goes into t-shirts and looking like an Eskimo, you know, with those stockings on the head and everything. But if you think about it, those little touches, you know, that men need to do. Leave your wife a note, for example. We know phones are there. These days we do WhatsApp and everything. But once in a while, take your time. Stick a note on the fridge door and tell her, babe, you look good while you sleep. You know, those little things. They're those little things that men are not good at. And I think we really need to reinvent that. We need to start doing the things that we are supposed, the child in us is supposed to do.
All right, okay. I think we've had this conversation as men, and I want to bring in a lady who's in the studio and hear what she has to say.
What do you want?
What do you want?
Yeah, what do you guys want?
What do you want?
What do the women want? They want you guys to be on top of your game.
That is very general. On top here meaning, on top here could be misunderstood, you know.
Just you, clearly, Michael. No, but I think, as you said, it's all those little things that both parties have to be proactive about. You have to consciously go out of your way and make that effort to do something. Otherwise, then you leave it to fate, and fate will get your fortunes, as I said earlier, dwindling, and then you'll have yourselves to blame. But you keep it exciting, spice it up. You talked about lingerie. I guess some of the things we're talking about on morning television, but hey, that should be done. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on our relationship segment this morning. That is where we will seek to end the show this morning, because our time is up. And we thank you so much for joining us. A lot of your feedback I see this morning, and Charity here is agreeing and saying, indeed, women as well must put away the ngombe nisengenge t-shirts and be more sexy and, yes, appealing. Also, another one here from George is saying that I think women love money, and that is what keeps them happy and active. I don't know what I think about that, but Michael?
Well, I guess when we talk about women loving money, I think really the word that we're looking for is security. they need security. That's one, I think, of the fundamental needs. So money does have a sense of security. So I would not look at it as money per se, but they need security.
So you're speaking for all women, that all women
No,
are
no, no,
about
no.
security?
I just think that security is it's a major need for a woman.
Okay. The director says wind up now, so we must go. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow on State of the Nation. Michael will be tackling one of the very important subjects we've seen play out in the past week, so do join us then.
Yes, that's tomorrow. And then we have Fitness Thursday. And I think tomorrow we can do Zumba. It's been a while since we've done Zumba. So yeah, join us on Fitness Thursday. But for now, we'll take this opportunity to wish you all a fantastic and a wonderful day. Thank you for keeping it KTN. Do stay right here as we leave.
Bye. As we leave.